Israeli diplomat, statesman, and writer Abba Eban died on Sunday at the age of 87. He was only 31 when he became Israel's first ambassador to the United Nations in 1948. In 1950, he became ambassador to the United States as well. Between 1963 and 74, he served as Israel's deputy prime minister and then foreign minister. He was famous for saying of his adversaries at the negotiating table, they never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Abba Eban was an extraordinarily eloquent man and a friend of this program. We remember him tonight with a look at a few moments we had here at this table. If you never do another thing for your country, you have earned your place in its history. You're the youngest ambassador to the UN, the youngest, I think, ambassador at 35 or thereabouts here in the United States. A partner with David Ben-Gurion, the great leader of Israel, prime minister. Yet there are those who say Abba Eban is more popular in the world than he is in Israel, that he has more power because we are so attracted to him than he does in his own country. Is that fair, and how do you deal with it?
Well, listen, I can't really complain about what's happened in my own country because I was a minister, a senior minister for 15 years. And I only got dismissed when I was top of the polls, which indicates what a perverse thing public opinion is. But so, the fact is that the arena for my action was the international arena, when the problem for Israel was to assert itself within the universal context. And therefore I had a much bigger platform. I had the microphone. The United Nations in those days, I think Boutros is going to pine for that. I remember when there were 5 pages of the New York Times with the speeches, and I think this station was broadcasting either the platitudes or the wisdom of people every night. And except for some occasions, like the Desert War, the United Nations has sort of faded a little bit. But in our days, it was crucial, it was central.
And your staring rhetoric made the case for Israel becoming a member of that body.
Yes, one of the things I had to do, and do as the head of our delegation, was to propose Israel for membership in the United Nations at a time when many historic states like Italy and Romania and Bulgaria, Ireland, Austria were not getting in, and we, as it were, jumped the line. And that was vital for us because we had to eliminate from the Arab mind the idea that Israel was temporary or illegitimate, and membership in the United Nations, whatever else it does, is a certificate of legitimacy.
Incredibility, yes, legitimacy is the word. Oratory. You and I have talked about this before, but you are one of the, I think you've even been honored as some great orators Hall of Fame or something.
Yeah, I'm the only one who's alive in that, which they seem to resent when I call them up to thank them.
What? Did you learn that? I mean, how did you become so good at being an orator?
We had a lot of discussions
in
the Security Council, and a lady in Texas wrote and said, Israel is a wonderful country. You've only existed for 3 weeks and you already speak English. My education was, there used to be a classical tradition in British education. That education meant literature. It meant Latin, it meant Greek, it meant biblical rhetoric, and all these civilizations. The Greek, the Roman, and the Hebrew one were really rhetorical. You say things for the purpose of being heard.
And clear.
And rhetoric is an enormous part of life because there are only 2 ways of influencing people. One is by the gun and the bayonet, and the other is by talking to them.
I just want to pick up on 3 moments in your life, and there are a lot of them here in terms of conversations, interesting conversations with de Gaulle and Lyndon Johnson before the 6 Days War, and in which you were going for support, and it was not forthcoming from either of them in that case in terms of the level of commitment that you wanted. But first, you're 2 years old. You're in London. The Balfour Declaration has just been announced. Your mother, this was your introduction to Zionism. Pick up that story.
Well, my mother was a widow. She was, her husband, my father, died when I was about a year old, and she comes to London looking both for a job and for consolation. Not easy to get either of them. She finds her way to this very modest Zionist office, and one day she takes a typically Zionist decision. Here am I screaming and yelling in the cot, but she says, no, Zionism comes first. Off she goes in the fog and translates.
Leaving you in the crib.
Crib, yes. That's the way we all behave. And translates into Russian and French the Balfour Declaration, which was a momentous document because it was the first document which brought the Jewish people into the law and politics of nations.
Okay, second, the time, and I think it may have been, I don't know when, that you first set foot on Palestinian, in the land of Palestine, which was to be your homeland.
Well, here was I, a young man in England. I was already with one foot on the rung of the faculty in Cambridge University. That seemed to be my vocation, my arena of action. The war came, and out I'm sent to the Middle East, and I languish in Cairo, feeling that Jerusalem is so close and yet unattainable.
You were an intelligence officer in the British Army at the time.
I was in the British Army. I'd reached the rank of Major, and suddenly there's a plan to train the young Jews of Israel in order to make provision for the possibility that Palestine will be overrun by the Nazis. And Winston Churchill, having been very angry and annoyed by the fact that there had been these shameful surrenders in Singapore and Tobruk, had this simple motto: kill a lot of Germans even if you are overrun. And who but the Jews had the motive to resist Hitler? So off I went, chugging in a train across Sinai. And I come to a place called Rehovot, and I see these white houses, these green olive trees, the intoxicating smell of orange blossom, and a Hebrew sign, Rehovot, and I knew that for the first time I was in a Hebrew domain. And whereas in England and in America, Zionism and Palestine were problems and issues and subjects of debate, here was a very living reality, and I felt that this reality was going to be the source and the content of my life.